What would you do if you had 20 people apply for your program who were qualified, who said they were interested, said they were ready to go, and only one of them bought? This is a story I want to tell you about how I went from one of the lowest starts of the month, longest sales cold streaks that I've had this entire year, to our best month of the entire year. The first 12 days of August, I only brought in $6,000 of sales. And for some of you, 6,000 might sound like a lot, but for us, we have to hit 30K a month just to pay my salary, pay my husband's salary, pay our team, pay all the different things that we pay to run our business. And that's just to break even. So knowing that the first half of the month was only $6,000 was pretty scary for me. But by the end of the month, we hit just about $60,000 in cash collected. And this was actually our biggest month of the year so far. And no, that turnaround didn't happen just because I got lucky. It happened because I slowed down, I recentered myself, and I made 6 key shifts that turned the entire month around in just 18 days. I'm sharing this story partially because you guys requested it on my Instagram stories a few days ago, but I'm also sharing it because I know that 2025 has been a tough year in the online business for most people. Even for experienced coaches that have been in the game for a while, sales feel shakier, leads are ghosting more often, and what used to work even a year or two ago is not seeming to work as well anymore. So, if you're a health coach or a practitioner or any sort of coach or consultant who's great at what you do, but you're feeling that frustration right now, you're going to want to hear this episode today. I'm going to be walking you through the exact 6 moves that I made, things like recentering myself in my spiritual life, fixing my funnel that I had literally just rebuilt the month prior. I adjusted my ad spend, I recommitted to sales calls, I tightened up my follow up sequence, and I even created a higher level offer for my most premium clients. We're going to get into details of exactly what I did in all of those 6 areas that allowed me to turn my entire month around and 10x my sales in just 18 days. By the end of this episode, you're going to see how to turn a sales slump into your best month yet, not by just chasing more tactics or just doing more, but by making decisions and leading like a true CEO. So let's dive in. I want to start with step 1, and this one's potentially going to be a little controversial depending on who you are or what your beliefs are. But one of the things that was brought to my attention in August was how much my spiritual life had suffered since really, I mean, I would say being pregnant with my newest baby. But really after I gave birth and all of a sudden I was dealing with a newborn and a nearly 3-year-old. Pretty much anything that didn't relate to childcare or business fell by the wayside. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. It is what it is. If you've ever transitioned from 1 to 2 kids, you know how much life can change and how just busy everything can get. And because if you guys have followed me for a while, you know that I shut down a multi 6-figure program halfway through last year, and I still delivered that program to the clients that were enrolled in it for most of the rest of the year. So we had a pretty big revenue hit last year that was based on that decision and just based on the fact that I didn't have the bandwidth to run 2 high touch programs and be pregnant and have a toddler and, just all the things that were going on. So because of that revenue hit last year, I had to figure out how to make up for those lost sales. And it's one of those things where sometimes you make decisions like that that are looking to the long term, but they have short term consequences. So when I shut that program down, we turned off about $200,000 worth of revenue that would have normally come in from that offer for the second half of the year. And I didn't really replace it. It's not that I didn't make sales at all. I just didn't replace that volume with sales in other places, partially because I was pregnant and very tired and not necessarily able to make the changes necessary, but also I had to deliver the program, the other program that I shut down, and I actually didn't have time to both run that program and turn my entire attention to our NBA program, which is now our signature offer. So I had a lot of revenue that I had to rebuild from last year. To be honest, we took on some debt to cover those expenses that would have normally come out of that $200,000 or more that would have come from that other program. And I started this year off already kind of in a bit of a hole while also in January, I was 9 months pregnant, and then in February, I had a newborn and a nearly 3-year-old. So, the year started off kind of rough for me. I've talked a little bit about this on Instagram. I haven't necessarily shared a lot of details, not because I'm afraid to, but I just wanna make sure that anytime I'm sharing something that it's coming from a lesson, and that's one of the reasons I'm bringing it up today, is because this year started off as a big uphill climb for me. So, even though I'm consistently doing like 30, 40, 50K months in the business, we do have higher expenses than somebody who's a total solopreneur or somebody whose partner works in their own job and not in the business. And again, we had that debt that had been taken out to cover our expenses for last year based on that big dip in revenue and the fact that I was still delivering that program. We still had coaches that we were paying for that program, all the things that had to happen to wrap that program up. So, starting in that hole and then throwing a newborn in there with me was a lot, to say the least. And I'm not proud to say this, but it is what it is. My relationship with God during that first few months, first half of the year really took a big hit for a variety of reasons. I'm not necessarily going to get into all of them, but between the struggle that I'd been in over the past year in business, a couple of things that have happened to me with business relationships that I have been in that were really disappointing for me in the last couple of years, feeling like a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say abandoned me when things were getting hard, but it was a situation where relationships I had had that seemed to only be there when I was doing well and when I was really available to support them. Getting into a position where I was struggling energetically, emotionally, just like had to make those big decisions and was really having a hard time with the transition and those relationships kinda disappeared from my life. So, it is what it is. I actually believe it was for the best. I don't want to have relationships in my life that are only there for me when things are going really well. But that was a big part of it where I felt like a lot of people who used to be there for me, used to be people I could rely on for emotional support, for brainstorming, for just different things that you have relationships for. Those people dipping out of my life and just kind of, like, disappearing. Plus, having some issues where I saw a lot of stuff going on in the online space where I'm a Christian. So, just to give context here, my faith is specifically Christianity. Seeing a lot of people that called themselves Christian in the online space over the last year, year and a half, 2 years, seeing how they were behaving was something that was making me kind of have a bit of a faith crisis. I'm not saying I stopped believing in God or stopped believing in Jesus. I just started to question, if this is real, then how are these people acting this way? Or how are these people treating me and my family this way? Or how are these people saying one thing and then behind the scenes doing something totally different? So that whole storm of my questioning of my faith choices was happening at the same time as all of the business stuff. And so it wasn't like I was like, oh, I don't believe in this anymore. I think I just felt like I didn't prioritize it because it just didn't feel that important when what I thought was most important was to put my nose to the grindstone and get the business back into a place where it was growing and profitable and that we were paying off the debt that had been accrued to cover that drop in revenue from last year. So, that is a lot of information about why I was dealing with some uh dip in my spiritual practices. And I'm not using it as an excuse. I don't actually think that was a legitimate reason to stop participating in my normal personal spiritual practices. If anything, it was actually a reason to get deeper into those, but I was exhausted, I was distracted, I was stressed, trying to figure things out, trying to make big decisions, and it was just a lot to all have happening at the same time. And my daily Bible reading, my prayer life, all of that stuff really took a hit during that phase. So that was, like I said, a lot of information, but I wanted to give you the context because I know there's a lot of coaches out there that are really into like energetics and manifestation and, attracting things based on your vibration. And I'm not saying any of that's like totally inaccurate. I do think a lot of it is twisted and way too focused on self and self betterment versus using that spiritual practice to just treat other people in a better way. But it is something where I do believe that God will allow us to go through challenging times and allow us to suffer and allow us to keep hitting walls if that experience is what's necessary to bring us back to him. And I honestly think that was a big part of what I was going through in the last couple years where I was way overemphasizing certain relationships, where I was putting them on a pedestal, where I was really chasing their approval, chasing their friendship, chasing their interest in me. It wasn't a total waste of time. I learned a lot of lessons, but I do feel like there's a lot of people that are no longer in my day-to-day life that I had put way too much emphasis on what they thought of me, if they were friendly with me, if they were talking to me, all of that. And rather than going to God, who is the source of everything, let alone my sense of identity and my just groundedness spiritually and my sense of value, regardless of how other people treat me, I basically just went internal and started trying to just fix things myself and really started isolating and started, really just focusing on, let me take care of my babies and let me go do the work I need to do for work. And it was definitely not the right approach. I would say somewhere around the summer was when I started to kind of have that literal come to Jesus moment where I was like, this isn't working. I think God's trying to tell me something. I do believe that he wants the best for me, but there's a reason that he's not fixing this problem right now. And so I really had to pause the whole, wake up and do everything that I need to do for the business or do everything I need to do for my kids and really get back to reconnecting with my faith. So I'm getting into a lot of detail here. I actually wasn't necessarily planning on sharing all of this, but I just want to share it in an honest way because I know that my listeners are all sorts of different beliefs. And whether you're a Christian or you're some other type of religious belief or you're spiritual or you are atheist, whatever it is, that's obviously up to you. For me, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that the Bible is true and that my relationship with God is the most important thing and the only thing that I can really rely on at all, let alone should be relying on, but it's actually the only thing that I can rely on because everything else in life constantly changes. And for me, as somebody who is historically a control freak, that's hard for me to accept the fact that I'm not in control and that I can't necessarily just white knuckle it and work my way out of a problem. And so I really hit this place, I would say somewhere in like the beginning of August where I was like, you know what? This whole like work my butt off just to fix problems is not working. And I literally can't do it anymore. And it's really time for me to get back into trusting that God's going to take care of this and being okay with slowing down and just trusting that he's going to provide for us. And I don't have to be the person who keeps the entire earth spinning on its axis. So I started getting back into reading or even at least just listening to a daily Bible. I guess we call it a devotional, but basically just like a chapter that had some commentary on it and really taking that seriously. And that is something that I still have a long ways to go to get back to what I feel is an appropriate level of attention to that. But even that little shift in the course of a few weeks made me feel so much better about everything that was going on and really made me feel like there's no situation that God cannot pull me out of. So, and it was funny because the particular book that I was going through was Exodus. So if you're familiar with the Bible, Exodus is like the 10 Commandments story where they get the Jews out of Egypt. That was something that was reminding me of the kind of thing that God is capable of doing and making me think, oh, well, if God can do that, my business is like no sweat, right? So that was such an important place for me to start from mentally in order to even be able to handle the other changes that I'm going to talk about. So I really had to get my identity back into my relationship with God and not into the sales numbers, the revenue goals, even the reputation that I have online, even just needing to mute other people that I was following that were causing me to question myself, or even getting back into that belief that God's guiding me and that I can trust him with the direction of my business versus constantly looking for other people to tell me what to do or constantly looking for somebody to come in and rescue me or come in and fix things for me. So that was a lot more than I was going to share, but I wanted to start there because it's so important when you're growing a business to have your identity rooted in something other than the business, because even if you're doing well numbers wise, you cannot hook how you feel about yourself to the dollar amount that's coming into your bank account any given week. And I really think that that made a huge difference for me in being able to tackle the problems that had cropped up in the changes that I had made to the business that weren't working that I'm going to talk about. But that is something that is literally what has allowed me to get through some of the hardest seasons in business that I've ever experienced. In a season that's also probably one of the hardest personal life seasons I've ever been through, having a newborn and a toddler and it being 2025, which I think has been challenging for a lot of people. The lesson here is look at where your identity is placed. Your identity should not be in your business because if it is, it doesn't matter how good your business is, you're always going to be disappointed. And nobody's business just takes a rocket ship up to the moon and has no dips or no challenges. And even if you're growing really fast, there's other challenges that come up, and you cannot be basing your self-worth off of how well your business is doing week to week or month to month. All right. That was step one. Big spiritual overhaul of my practices and my perspective to even be able to make the rest of these changes in the first place. Step two. I had to totally rebuild a funnel that I had just finished rebuilding after taking some advice from a coach I had hired to help me reposition my offer for a more advanced audience. So, backstory is I have mostly been doing stuff on my own this year. I haven't really been able to participate in any sort of big groups mostly because of my energy, my time. I can't really commit to group calls. I can't travel. There's a lot of stuff I can't do with the current phase of life that I'm in. So I'd been kind of riding solo for most of the first half of the year. And in June, I decided that I was ready to hire some additional feedback, hire some additional help. And I do wanna say that the person I hired, I really like her, and I think that she gave a lot of really great advice. A lot of the things I ended up doing to fix this sales slump were things that I was inspired by from the program that I got from her, and I had made all of these changes to the messaging in the funnel based on her recommendations, and I didn't pause and actually check in with myself to think, "Okay, is this actually what I think is the best way to go for this funnel?" Mostly because I just felt like if I'm gonna hire somebody, I should go all in on what they're recommending and try it, and who knows what's gonna happen. Hindsight is always 2020, right? So I rebuilt this entire funnel, which was working, just not working as well as I wanted it to work in the first half of the year. I wanted to get faster sales. I wanted to get more advanced clients. I wanted to get people who were not afraid to spend money on themselves. And I followed this coach's recommendations with very specific messaging changes to the funnel that I had created. And I obviously don't know for sure because, it's just a guess based on data, but this messaging change that I did in July that really took off at the end of July, beginning of August, totally trashed my sales. So it was really weird, actually. We had a couple of weeks in August where the frequency of applications shot up. So we're usually getting a couple of applications a week, maybe like 3 to 7, maybe up to 10 applications a week. We get a lot of people who aren't ready to work with us. But it's not like I'm getting multiple applications a day every single day for the first half of the year. The first 10 days of August, we had I think it was like 20 applications come in just in those first 10 days, which is a lot for us. And at first, when I saw those numbers, I was really excited because I was like, oh my gosh, it's working. We have all these leads coming in. That's amazing. And we had out of those 20 leads, one person buy, which was not the result that I was hoping for. It was a much lower conversion level than my original messaging had been getting for us. And what was worse is that we had all these people applying and literally just fully ghosting the process. They weren't answering messages, they weren't responding to DMs. I even can text people and they were not responding to texts. They weren't moving forward. They weren't doing anything. Like they would apply and say they were ready to go and that they really wanted to work with us and then literally just disappear. That is not typical for us. This was relatively new that we had this huge influx of people that went through the entire sales process as far as the application, the funnel, all of that, and then just fully ghosted the actual sales part. So when I was looking at the data and I saw 20 applications in less than 2 weeks and only one of those people buying, I felt sick. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what just happened?" This whole funnel is now screwed up. I spent the entire month rebuilding everything, reworking all of the messaging, like reworking our ad copy, all this stuff that I changed to theoretically make more sales off of this funnel. And it totally tanked. So you can imagine when that happens, it's stressful. And I was like, okay, do I just need to like go back to the original funnel? Like I have to undo all of this work that I just did. It took me like weeks to create the work. Side note, myself, my husband, and my baby all got sick for a span of like 2 weeks in August. So I was doing this all being sick, having a sick baby, running on like a couple of hours of sleep every night, and being like, okay, I just spent like an entire month redoing this whole funnel, and all of that work just made things worse. So it was pretty stressful. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, because I was rerouting myself spiritually in my faith in God, I didn't let it spiral me because it's really easy when that kind of thing happens to just go off the rails mentally and feel like this is it, the business is dead, and just freak out. I probably had a little bit of a moment of like, oh, this really sucks that this is happening because I was exhausted and I had just did this whole project and literally the results went in the wrong direction. But I wasn't gonna stay there because that's not what a CEO of a business does. You basically have your moment to feel frustrated and then you have to do something. So I decided I am just gonna rebuild this funnel again with what I think is the appropriate messaging to get people who are actually serious about getting our help and actually serious about moving forward and are not just attracted by the shiny object of how much money that they can make or how easy it can be, which that technically gets more leads when you talk about dollar amounts and how easy things can be with, your approach. But what I realized is I was attracting a lot of people who really were not ready to do any sort of work to actually get that result. And they were not moving forward because they just really weren't serious about working in that capacity. So I basically top to bottom changed the entire messaging in the funnel, refocusing on helping people develop a premium signature program and then get high paying clients for that program every week through our sales and marketing strategy that we teach. And that through line went through the rest of my funnel. And again, I had to change every email. I had to change the pages, like everything had to change. And our total applications went down, but our sales went way up. And that's what matters. So I know it can be really attractive to put messaging out that gets a ton of people signing up, a ton of leads, really low cost leads if you're running ads. But just because you have more leads does not mean you're going to make more sales. I would rather have 10 times less leads and have most of those people buy than have 20 people apply for my program and one purchase. So getting back to the messaging that speaks to the person who's the buyer and not just the person who says they're interested but then doesn't move forward was a huge part of the course correction that I did to fix that funnel. And it was a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. There was a couple of days where I was up until like 10, 11 o'clock at night to fix everything because I did not want to delay and then have an even longer sales slump. But once I got everything up and running, that's when I saw a big change in the quality of our applicants and the sales conversion shot back up. And actually, it shot up higher than what it had been even before all of these things changed. So That was a huge thing I did, and that was a lot of work, I'm not gonna lie. Like, sometimes there's things like this that happen where you have to do a lot of work, and as, someone named Layla Hormozy says, "Go into the pain cave and just fix it," and that's literally what I did. I was like, "I'm gonna go into the pain cave right now. I am so tired, I'm sick, my voice is messed up, but I don't even care. I'm just gonna record this thing, even if I don't feel my best, even if I'm running on hardly any sleep, even if, this week has been super stressful." Oh, I did forget to mention, while we were all getting sick, my toddler's daycare flooded. So then we had like 2 weeks where we didn't actually have childcare. And it also just happened to be the week that my parents went to go visit my brother who just had his first baby. So normally they do some childcare and they probably would have increased their availability during that week had they been in town, but they were not there. So we did not have any childcare except for a little bit of time at the gym at the YMCA for my toddler. And because I was sick and my baby was sick, I couldn't even go there because I can't take a sick baby to daycare, and I didn't even really hardly use it for my toddler anyway. So, all of that was going on in August too. So August was crazy. Definitely one of the harder months I've experienced this year. But like I said, I went into that pain cave and I said, I'm just going to do this and get it done and just figure it out. And I don't care how tired I am, it just has to happen. So there are moments in your business where, yes, I talk about time freedom and emotional freedom and joy and all this fun stuff. And yes, the business can provide all that. But there are going to be moments in your business where you just have to put your big girl panties on and do the work. And that was one of those times. So I rebuilt the funnel and it massively increased the quality of our leads. And I'm really happy with the people that we're attracting into the program now. So that was a really, really important change that I made. And it was something that I had to kind of ignore what the coach had recommended, and not because, again, she had some other recommendations that were great, and I'll talk about one of those in a minute, but that messaging angle was just not the right fit for my audience, for the people I wanna work with, for the thing that compels them to buy, and I had to just trust my judgment on that and go back to what I knew that really resonates with the people that I love working with. All right, step 3, this should be a short one. I had to cut ad spend so that I could fix the foundation of the sales funnel because my ads are a big source of our leads for that funnel. And I realized, okay, worst case scenario, even if these ads are good ads, we're sending people into a funnel that's not attracting the right buyers. So I don't want to just be spending a ton of money to grow leads that might not even be the right fit, or maybe we're not effectively selling to them. So I cut my ad spend by about 50%. The goal was to protect the cash flow and to not waste money on a funnel that wasn't working. And this did feel like going backwards because literally the month prior, I was like, okay, we're making sales, we're doing well. I'm going to increase the ad spend. And I had to basically just like reverse course on that because of how this funnel was not working. That said, I'd rather have a short-term dip and slow things down than burn money on leads that weren't buying, especially if the ads themselves were creating some of that problem in the first place. So I had to really slow down to fix the messaging in the ads and to also really reduce. I didn't go to zero on the ad spend, but I massively reduced how much we were spending so that I wasn't just throwing money away, getting a bunch of leads into a funnel that wasn't going to convert the way that I wanted it to. So I do have a tendency to throw money at problems. That's a bad habit of mine, and I have had to be a lot more judicious around where I spend my money, especially in a year that we're rebuilding, in a year that we're recovering after a lot of changes in my business and my personal life. And so deciding to reduce ad spend while were fixing, I was fixing the funnel was something that it definitely took a minute to slow down, but I knew that this was going to be the right thing to do so that I could speed back up once the funnel was working properly again. So that was a pretty short explanation, but I did actually cut my ad spend down by about 50% to make sure I wasn't just throwing my money away on leads that weren't going to convert. The next step, step 4, was to add sales calls back into our primary funnel. So this was another part of what I had hired this other coach to learn how to do was to remove sales calls. And it's not that I'm like anti-sales calls. I actually think sales calls can be really effective. But I also was thinking, okay, maybe we don't need sales calls. Maybe we can get people buying without sales calls. And so I made sales calls kind of more of an afterthought in the application process versus something that was very upfront and in people's face to offer right off the bat. And most people weren't booking calls at all. And that could be another reason that people were ghosting us in the sales process. We had fewer bookings altogether. Even the calls that were booked, a lot of them were canceling within, a day or a couple hours of the call. And even the people that were getting on the calls, a lot of them really weren't that committed to taking action. So that was a big change where taking sales calls out of the main process of applying and enrolling in the MBA program was not the right move for us. And part of the reason I knew this was because I looked at our data from basically since we changed over to this application system back in May. I would say like 80% of our buyers had a sales call as part of the process. And so that told me data wise that sales calls are a big conversion point for us. I'm not the only one that does sales calls, but I also made myself way more available to do calls and even personally invited people who were on the fence about working with us to my calendar to get on the call with them. Even though, yes, I would love to reduce sales calls or get out of them, I would much rather coach a paying client than get on a sales call, especially with somebody who ends up like fully ghosting or, saying they're going to join and then not joining. But I knew that me getting on those calls was something that was really going to help, especially for those people that were highly qualified, good fit leads, but they were on the fence for any given reason. So this is a situation where sometimes leadership as a CEO means stepping back into parts of your business that you were hoping to get out of because that's what's required to make sales. I was willing to do it if it meant that people who might have not bought would end up buying. And I also knew that if I could get on some calls with people, I could start to get a better sense of why people were maybe hanging out on the fence more with the offer versus moving forward when they were an aligned fit. So adding those calls back in, even getting them back on my calendar and really diving back into that hands-on sales process was so important to turn the month around. And it's not to say that we didn't have people buy without calls because we did, which is awesome. I'm very excited about that option for us. But I didn't want to take calls out of the process for the people who knew they were going to need them. And so adding that back into the funnel really helped turn things around very fast because we had a lot more calls booked for the second half of August. And a lot of those calls did convert into paying clients. Side note, I do have team members that do sales calls as well. So we have 3 support coaches for NBA that also do our sales calls. So that way we can offer a lot more availability because I don't take calls in the morning. And I want to make sure if people need a call in the morning that they can talk to somebody. So even just getting my team's calendar filled with more calls was important too, but also my calendar being available and personally reaching out to people and getting them into my calendar was very, very important to turn this month around. Now, step 5 was to automate the sales touch points and also enforce a decision deadline. This automated sales touch points thing was actually one of the most valuable things I learned from the coach that I hired. And so that's why I was saying, like, yeah, maybe the messaging wasn't the right move, but I learned a lot of systems from her that were super valuable to making this process work even better. So, especially with applications increasing, which they did, we got to a place where I literally couldn't follow up with everybody manually at the level that was necessary to provide those touch points for the person who was in the buying decision. We're in a very low trust economy right now with the online business space, and people need more than one email going to them with the invitation to work with you, especially if you're charging high ticket. And if I had to do that manually for 20 people a week that were accepted into the program and potentially going to join, then that was a lot of emails for me to be sending and a lot of people for me to keep track of. And that could be a big reason why we had more people ghosting with the 20 plus applications that came in that first half of August. So I knew that we needed to have something that was going to allow for those increased touch points with people where I could actually show the value of the MBA program and help facilitate the sales decision without it being manual and relying on my energy and my ability to keep track of everyone I had communicated with. So one of the big things I did from a systems perspective was I added a 7-day automated email sequence for accepted applicants. So once somebody is accepted into the NBA program, we give them 7 days to make their decision, yes or no, to work with us. And over the course of that 7 days, they get emails every day positioning NBA as the solution to their problem and inviting them to join. So it's kind of similar to the way you would make a sales sequence during a launch open cart, but everybody's got their own individual open cart that they're able to decide yes or no within their deadline. And if they do not join within that 7 days, they have to reapply later. And if we don't have space for that month, they have to wait. Because again, this is a very high touch program. There is one-on-one involved. We want to make sure that we're providing a high touch experience for our clients, and we can't just have 20 plus people joining every month to make that happen. And so I'm hoping we'll get to a place where we do actually have to put people on a wait list. But all of that to say, somebody, if they don't make a decision within 7 days or they decide they're not ready within 7 days, they do have to come back and get back in line if they want to work with us in the future. So adding that 7 day deadline and then adding that 7 day email sequence that includes all of the normal sales positioning type of messaging was something that I feel like made a huge difference to our sales for the second half of the month. And that 7 day deadline also gets people off of the fence. And it really, I would say it kind of kicks out the dabblers, the people who are like, maybe I'm interested, maybe I'm not really ready to make a decision. Honestly, I do not want people in the NBA program who can't make a decision within 7 days. I don't think 7 days is absurd. Some people will be like, you have 24 hours to decide or something. That's a little crazy. But 7 days is plenty of time to make a decision about whether or not you want to move forward with something in your business. And so if somebody can't make a decision within 7 days, honestly, I don't feel like they're a good fit to work with me, at least right now, because decisiveness and taking action on a shorter timeline is something that is so, so important to making money and making progress in an online business in 2025. So I want people who are able to make a decision. And again, the decision could be a no, but I want people to be able to make a decision within 7 days about what they're going to do to grow their business. Because if they come into the program and it took them 2 months to even decide to work with us, what do they think is going to happen when we're asking them to make decisions around their business and they want to get sales and they want to do it quickly, but they can't even make a decision without taking like a month to do it? It really does not turn out well when somebody cannot be decisive in our program. So that was one of the reasons why I added this deadline, partially so that I wasn't just following up endlessly with people who weren't really that serious about working with us, but also because I want to curate this group to be full of people who, even if they're nervous, even if they're scared, even if it's a big decision for them, that they are still committed to making decisions within a reasonable time frame to grow their business. So that, I think, was a really good decision on our part to give that deadline and to make it so that if somebody misses the 7 day window, they do have to reapply and we have to even see if they have space to join, because we're getting people joining the program who are much easier to work with because they take action quickly and they don't need to be babysat with the decisions that they're making, and they don't need to sit on something for 30 days, 60 days before they actually move forward. So that, I really think, was a huge benefit to the business, adding in that 7 day deadline with the autoresponder email sequence that sells the program. I also do personal reach outs to people, but it's much better having that 7 day autoresponder to do the bulk of the selling versus me having to personally reach out to somebody a bunch of times over the course of 7 days. As an example, we had somebody who was a perfect fit for the program. She applied. She said she didn't need a call. She got put into the email sequence. I checked in with her on day, like, I don't know, 5 of the 7 days. I sent a text just to say, hey, just wanted to see if you had any questions. And her response was, no, I'm good. I'm joining tonight. Can't wait. And then she literally paid in full without me ever having to do any sort of manual sales process with her. So that was super exciting. That is, I of course want more of that. And that's what we're working towards. And it is proof that having that system in place and not having to manually follow up with somebody helps people make decisions faster and helps people confidently come into the program without me having to manually chase them down and manually be reaching out to them over and over, because the sales emails are effective and they help somebody see the value and how NBA is going to help them. All right, the final step. This is going a little longer than I expected, but I had a lot to share. August was a month, to say the least. This is a little bit of a different perspective, but it's one that I'm actually really happy I did this decision because it's really easy when people are applying to work with you and a lot of them are saying that they don't have the money to invest right now in your solution to think about, well, what can I create that's lower ticket to sell to these people? And instead of doing that, which might have seemed like the more obvious step to take, I asked myself instead, what do my highest paying clients actually want? Because what I realized is that for some people, NBA may not be the right fit because they are too busy in their business to do all the work themselves and they want some done for you work for them. So I thought about, okay, if somebody is already making good money, they already have an offer that's selling, but their income is capped and they don't have the sales and marketing expertise that I do, what would be the perfect offer to make to them? And that's how I came up with a higher level done for you option, which was 2 to 3 times the price point of NBA, but was a full done for you service that included an entire done for you funnel build out and 3 months of ads management, which is something that most people do not know how to run ads without wasting a ton of money. My husband and I do know how to run ads and are running them for our clients now. And so having that done for you funnel build plus done for you ads management was really, really attractive to people at a higher level of business. So the lesson there was that rather than thinking about how do I sell to the people who say that they don't have the money for my signature offer, what could I do to sell to the people who are actually beyond the signature offer and want more from me and are willing to pay a lot more? So this is really going up market instead of down market. And I'm not saying I would never create something down market, but I was not going to just try to sell, 100 spots to $100 offer. I basically made an offer that was $12 to $15,000 and found two people to buy. And And when I say we did 60K in cash, those people are on a payment plan, so they haven't even actually paid the full price point for those offers. That decision to go up market brought in an extra 10K for the month that had I not done that, I might not have been able to make that money. So I want you to be thinking if you're getting a lot of pricing objections, instead of saying, well, how do I create something that's low ticket for those people? Think about if there's a way you could create something that's actually more expensive for somebody who wants more than what your signature program is. And you might be surprised that you can get people buying at that level because they thought that your signature program was too basic for them or that they were beyond what that signature program offered. So that was a little bit of a unique decision to say, okay, what would people who think they're beyond NBA, what would they want? Or even if they don't think they're beyond NBA, maybe they just don't have time to be doing a lot of stuff themselves and they would be willing to pay 2 to 3 times the price for me to do it for them. So that was definitely part of what helped turn my sales around is putting that offer out there and getting two high paying done for you clients to invest at a higher level than what my MBA program is priced at. And I actually have a bonus tip of something that I did in August that I think made a huge difference in our ability to make sales. And this was one that kind of just came as an intuitive hit for what I needed to do to get more people into our sales process that were faster decision makers and not people that needed to be nurtured over the course of weeks or months. And the decision that I think aligned with that desire was to put our program details open to the public. And when I say the details, I mean like the details of what we do and how we help people, not the price, because honestly, the price can change at any minute. And I don't want to have to go and re record something to just change the price. But as far as the actual offer details with how we help our clients, normally somebody had to go through a fairly extensive video funnel to even get those details. And actually, they had to apply to get the details. And what I realized, and again, this was kind of an intuitive hit that I had in August, I realized that there's going to be a percentage of my audience that doesn't want to go through a funnel to work with me. And they just want to know what I do and how I can help them. And they're ready to take action and ready to buy without having to watch a video at all. And I don't know why it took me so long to realize this because I was like, wait a second. At this point, unless somebody goes through this funnel, there's no obvious way for them to work with me. And that could be a big reason why we're not making as many sales as I know we're capable of because I'm making it too hard for my fast action takers to actually work with me. So I had recorded this overview video that goes through exactly how we serve our clients in the MBA program. And I basically just took that. I cut out any of the very specific offer details that can change at any time because I didn't want to have to go back and fix multiple videos. But I put the core details about the MBA program open to the public. It's one of the first links in my Instagram profile. So somebody can go watch that video to actually get a sense for how I can work with them and how I can support them. And then they can apply right there. So they still have to apply. I don't want people joining the program that didn't have to go through an application process because again, it's a high touch program. We have one-on-one calls as part of it. I don't want to just accept anybody into the program who's not necessarily an aligned fit. But I actually really do think that making it easier for someone to potentially work with me and my team was a huge part of the reason we were able to turn around the sales in August. So I forgot to put that one in my notes, but I just remembered it because I was like, "Oh yeah, I took the video I had recorded for people who had been accepted into the program and turned it into a public facing application video for the people who were thinking about applying so that anyone who didn't want to sit through a funnel and just wanted to go straight to apply to work with me could do that very easily." And again, I really have no idea why it took me so long to think about that. It's kind of a little embarrassing that it took me like 8 months into the year to realize that I was making it too hard for my really fast moving clients to actually apply to work with me. But I made that change and I really do think that that had a big impact on our sales for August. So funnels are great. I love funnels. I love having that system. I love knowing where I'm sending somebody if they are interested in potentially working with me, but they need to learn a little more about what I do, my philosophy, how I'm different. I love having our funnel to send people to, but I also now realize we also need it to be really easy for the person who knows they want to work with me because they listen to this podcast or they follow me on social media or a friend of theirs recommended me to them or they went into the dietitian business coaches group and they saw that I had good reviews, which apparently is fairly uncommon. Any of that stuff, if those people are like, "Oh, Laura's the person I want to work with. Let's go. I'm ready to do this." I want it to be so easy for them to apply and be accepted into the program if they're a good fit. So again, a little embarrassing that it took me so long to create that, but make sure if you're considering how to add this tip to your own business, make sure you're not making it too hard for good fit clients to become a client. There should be an easy path to work with you, and there should be one that's a little bit more of a nurturing path. You should have both. It shouldn't be one or the other because if you only have the fast path, then the person who needs a little bit more information will not apply. And then there should not only be the nurture path because then the people who know they want to work with you are ready to go may not ever even see that they can work with you in that capacity. So that is my bonus tip because it again, 8 months into the year, finally figured out I was making it too hard for my fast action takers. And I want to have different ways that fast buyers can work with me, as well as ones that need a little bit more education, a little bit more understanding of what sets our program apart so that they can move forward. Okay, so those are the now 7, not just 6, different things that I did in August to help turn our sales around, going from only $6,000 for the first 12 days of August to $60,000 or more for the entire month. So I basically 10x'd our cash in the span of 18 days. And it wasn't from luck. It wasn't just from, manifesting it or something. I had to do a lot of work and I had to make some big decisions and I had to really dive into my numbers to make that happen. But I also had the foundation of really effective systems and I didn't have to build everything from scratch. So that was one thing that was really helpful was knowing that the system itself was working and it had been working and I just had to fix the messaging and the positioning and the sales process to get back on track with the sales for that year or for that month. So without those systems, I definitely would not be doing anything close to what we're doing in our business. And those are the same systems that I teach in the NBA program. Those systems are what allows our business to keep earning money, even when I have a freaking crazy month like August where multiple people are sick, I'm sick, the baby's up every hour at night eating. I'm hardly sleeping. My toddler doesn't have childcare. And we were still able to do over $60,000 in cash collected for that month. Honestly, even saying it, I'm just like, holy cow, I cannot believe that that worked. So, all of that to say, if you're somebody who wants to have that ability to make money and make it predictably and build the systems that actually create those sales opportunities on a day to day basis and not just wing it or hope that you can just hustle your face off hard enough to make sales, then that is what we do inside the NBA program. Because the reality is, cold streaks like the one I experienced in August they're not what defines you as a business owner. I went 11 days without making a single sale in the business. And yes, I was a little freaked out, but I did not just panic and bail or just like throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and think about what would maybe fix it. I looked at the data and said, this is what I see in what's happening and what changed. And here's what I'm going to change to turn the ship around and go in the right direction. So being able to respond like that is so important when you're running a business and not freaking out and just like having no idea what to do. Having your systems to go back to and to just tweak those systems is the thing that's going to allow you to grow month after month, year after year without having to rebuild the business from scratch every 90 days. So I want you to imagine, instead of freaking out in a week or a month where your sales dip, imagine having the confidence and the systems to bounce back from a sales cold streak into your best month ever. That is what it looks like to build your business like a CEO. And that is exactly what we help you install inside the NBA program. So if you're a health coach or a practitioner who's great at what you do and you have an awesome service that you can provide, you know that you have the ability to facilitate a transformation for your clients, but you're tired of the unpredictability. You're tired of the dips in the revenue. You're tired of people ghosting you during the sales process. You're tired of having to send 15 messages to somebody for them to actually move forward to buy from you, or maybe they never even respond. You're tired of having to work so hard to make the money that you're making. You do not need more hard work. What you need first is a premium program that allows you to make more money from fewer clients. Second, you need a clear sales system that moves people through your sales process predictably and consistently and gives them enough effective touch points in order for them to make a buying decision. And you need to be able to put content out into the world, either organic or paid or a mix of both, that calls more of those dream ideal fit clients into your business every week, moves them into your sales process, and gets many of them saying yes to your premium offer so you can make more money with less time, less hustle, and more predictability. So that is exactly what we help you build inside the Nourish Business Accelerator. If you would like to apply for one of the spots that we have open in September, the link is in the show notes to fill in the application and move forward. You already know from this conversation today that you have 7 days to decide if you apply. So if you're not ready to make a decision, please don't apply. If you're not somebody who can make decisions within 7 days, this is not going to be the program for you right now. But if you're someone who knows they can make decisions quickly when they have the information presented, and I'm the person you want to work with, this is your next step to apply for the NBA program. So go to the link in the show notes, or you can DM me on Instagram at Laura Schoenfeld RD. DM me the word NBA, and I will share the application details with you. All right, well, that episode went way longer than I was expecting. I had a lot to share. It's been an interesting year. Very interesting August, but we did have this huge turnaround that I honestly was kind of shocked by. So when I saw what happened in a very short period of time, like I said, 18 days to go from $6,000 to over $60,000 in sales, I knew that this would be a good story to tell you guys. And I was confirmed by the Instagram poll I put up in my stories a few days ago that said, I think like 30 of you said that they wanted to hear the story. So I hope that this was helpful. Feel free to send me a DM on Instagram to let me know what you're taking away from this conversation. If there's anything that stood out to you as something you could put into your business, or if it inspired you to revisit your mindset and your spiritual life and really where you're placing your identity, because as I mentioned, that was the foundation for all of this in the span of that time. And I would not have been able to do it if my head was not grounded in the belief that God was going to take care of me and my family no matter what happened. So I hope you enjoyed this very deep dive conversation into how I turned August around and 10x'd our cash sales in the span of 18 days. I'll look forward to seeing you here next week on the Nourished CEO podcast. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Nourished CEO podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation and it brought you value, I would be so grateful if you would take a minute to leave a review over on iTunes. Your feedback not only helps more amazing coaches and practitioners like you find the show, it also helps me keep creating the kind of content that you want more of. Just head over to Apple Podcasts, search for the Nourished CEO podcast, scroll down and tap that write a review button. It only takes a minute and it means the world to me. Thanks again for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode.